Good evening. I welcome you to the 16th lecture on the course on applied electromagnetics. Today we are actually getting into the course with an introduction to electrostatics, and immediately we can understand that Coulomb's law comes into play, and that's what we are going to discuss today. So let us get into the class. So the outline of today's lecture is going to be, we are going to briefly discuss about the mechanics that we are going to employ for this course. Okay. However we want, we cannot escape from physics. Physics is everything. Physics governs our life. So we will briefly have some remarks on the various mechanics that we know today. Okay, but the mechanics that we are going to deal is all based on the classical Newtonian mechanics. That is the theory that propounded by the great James Clerk Maxwell for classical electrodynamics. Okay, so we are going to talk about it. Then we are going to define what electrostatic field means and why do we require electrostatic field and how we are going to deal with that, and do we really have electrostatic field in nature in our daily life. That is something that we will also see a little bit of that. Then once we lay out those definitions, we'll get into Coulomb's law and principle of superposition that we are going to discuss, following which we'll understand the magnitude of the electrostatic force. Okay, because Coulomb laid out the magnitude and the direction for the electrostatic force. Now, how strong is this electrostatic force? And that we are going to deal with that today. And once we discuss about that electrostatic force, we will compare with the well-known gravitational force and have an idea how strong this electrostatic force is. Okay, so that is the, and then finally, as usual, we will have some conceptual problem to understand this force of interaction between two charged bodies. Fine. Now, if you look at the mechanics, the first one that is well known is classical mechanics, and even today classical mechanics can explain the behavior of matter, especially when the particles are of large size and they do not travel with the speed of light. So any matter which consists of particles, and these particles are of quite large size, and these particles do not travel with the speed of light, then classical mechanics can explain everything perfectly very well even today. So that is actually what is known as Newtonian mechanics. And then when Michelson-Morley experiment came and the speed of light was established, in 1905, around that year, by that time, actually Einstein formulated the special theory of relativity, and single-handedly almost. Okay, it is Einstein's theory, special theory of relativity, and his theory is to explain particles that can travel with the speed of light in comparison to that. Okay, so the behavior of particles when they travel with the speed of light, we need to incorporate the special theory of relativity to describe its complete behavior. So that is about special theory of relativity. But during the same time, in early 1900, which is like 1900, 1905, that period, the black body radiation and photoelectric effect came, and in order to explain black body radiation, Planck put forward what is known as quanta of energy, and which is represented by the photon. Okay, so that theory actually started there, a new theory, and here we are dealing with particles which are of atomic and subatomic sizes. Okay, so when you want to describe those kind of phenomena that involves atoms and subatomic level, but you require a new theory, it was understood, and that theory is the quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics, many people contributed, but among them Bohr, Heisenberg, and Schrodinger. Okay, and then of course de Broglie. You can't. De Broglie put forward the duality of matter. Okay, that the particle nature and wave nature of matter put forward by de Broglie. Of course, it was the particle nature actually was seen with the photoelectric effect, while the wave nature was seen with Davis and Germer experiment on electron diffraction. Okay, so and interference, of course, those kind of stuff is all wave nature. But the photoelectric effect could be explained only when you consider the particle nature. So the duality of matter propounded by de Broglie, and of course the whole quantum mechanics built by Heisenberg and Schrodinger approach. Okay, so that is to explain particles whose sizes are of the order of atoms or subatomic behavior can be explained by that. But then if these atoms and subatomic particles travel with the speed of light, then these three theories could not explain. Then the quantum field theory came into picture, and it was the main framework was laid by these four people: Dirac, Pauli, Feynman, and Schwinger. Feynman, as you know, is a great genius, and he was a great genius, and he led the entire framework for quantum field theory. But so these are the four theories that we have come to know by 1935. But when they tried to bring in the unifying to explain the nature of forces, all forces that is present in nature with one single theory, none of these theories were able to bring the gravitational force into especially the quantum field theory. They could not bring the gravitational force into this picture. We will talk about the forces of nature at a later slide, but let us try to understand here. The subject that we are learning is electromagnetics, and the classical electromagnetics is actually, the James Clerk Maxwell, what he did was, he actually took cues from the earlier works led by Coulomb, Faraday, Ampere, etc. Okay, and he laid the foundation for bringing the electric and magnetic fields into one single theory, and his work, the phenomenal work of Maxwell, was entirely theoretical. The theory was proved by the detection of radio waves by Hertz in 1888. Of course, as I told in the introduction lecture, Maxwell did not live that long to seek his experimental proof for his theory. Okay, but today's whatever communication that we are having today is because of the great contribution by the genius like James Clerk Maxwell, and of course the experimental evidence followed by Hertz. Okay, we cannot forget this. But one important thing that I want to tell you here is, if at all there is any subject domain that has been well understood, that is the electrodynamics. Okay, so that classical electrodynamics is even applicable even after 150 years since the theory was propounded by James Clerk Maxwell. Maxwell, in fact, took his inspiration was Michael Faraday. Okay, so So the scientists learn from each other and they move forward. And in one word about the unification of forces, which I want to share with you, is that the superstring theory that came in much later has been, I mean, kind of considered as of now, but still there are people still working on this problem of trying to bring the gravity into picture. But there is a small issue over there, which I will talk about it later. Okay, when we talk about the force of nature. Fine. But one important thing about electrodynamics is that it fits into any of these theories very well. Okay, classical electrodynamics, though we learn, it is able to explain all the phenomena that is required for a communication engineer. Therefore, we are still learning with this classical electrodynamics. There are certain phenomena which we require to incorporate the relativity, where we talk about quantum relativistic phenomena. Those kind of things are there, but for our purpose, we are going to stick to classical electrodynamics alone. So, why and where electrostatic fields are used and present? Let us understand what is an electrostatic field. The field produced by charges at rest. Now the question is whether the charges are at rest. That is one fundamental question. Leave aside that. Let us assume that for the sake of theory, abstract concept, we are going to learn assuming that the charges are at rest. Okay, so there is a reason why we understand this, because what we have is rather a slow varying field, or we are in quasi-static, which means they are not really static, but quasi-static in the sense you can understand that the strength of the field, okay, or the charge distribution that was there earlier a while ago, the same charge distribution in spatial is now, and it will be also at a later time. So it is kind of a quasi-static, but it is not necessary that these charges are not moving, but it's a slow varying field. So try to understand that in reality you can't have complete static field, but for abstract, for trying to understand the picture, we develop, we understand, we assume that it is rather static, and we get along with a picture of a electrostatic field and try to gain knowledge out of it. And in fact, if you say, for example, we have stored the charges on the plates of capacitors. Okay, so the charges are there on the capacitor, so it's kind of a quasi-static. Okay, so we are going to rate the field due to a capacitor. We are going to learn all those things in this course. So where are they used? The niche applications. In fact, electromagnetics is everywhere. There is no place where electromagnetics is not used. The radiation is everywhere. It is ubiquitous, omnipresent. And having said that, if you look at computer or if you look at solid state electronic devices, you want to understand them, you have to bring in the electromagnetics concept inside there. Touch pads, cathode ray tubes, liquid crystal displays, electrostatic printers, everything, whatever you talk about, they all use electromagnetic fields. And same with medical diagnostics such as the electrocardiograms, okay, and other sensors which are used for medical diagnostic purposes. They all monitor the electrical activities of various organs. Therefore, the fields are involved there. Again, you talk about the industrial application in terms of spray coating, or you talk about electrodepositions, we involve the electrostatic or electric and magnetic fields. Depending on, for example, if I talk about the Hall effect measurements, which we use for characterizing a semiconductor devices, whether they are P-type or N-type, we use Hall effect, where we use both electric and magnetic field together. Okay, so it's everywhere. Now, come to Coulomb's law. The Coulomb's law is the most fundamental law. In fact, if I have to state unequivocally. Okay, which means undoubtedly, if I want to state something, I can very well say that both Coulomb's law and principle of superposition, these two laws are enough to completely picturize the electrostatic fields. What we are going to learn subsequently after Coulomb's law and principle of superposition is all some kind of bag of tricks, and that will help us to analyze a field problem in a much simpler way. Okay, so for example, we talk about Gauss law, or we talk about the curl of an electrostatic field, and then the definition of the scalar potential. All these things, okay, they are all derived from this fundamental Coulomb's law. Coulomb's law and principle of superposition, if one masters these two things, I think they can understand the entire electrostatics very well. Having said that, there is Coulomb's law is most universal. It can apply to any geometry of charge distribution. Not necessarily we need to invoke symmetry, cylindrical, spherical, and all these things. But Gauss law requires the symmetries to be invoked. Okay, so what does this Coulomb's law tells? It tells you that the force of attraction or repulsion. Attraction comes when the charges are unlike, which means there is a positive charge in space, there is a negative charge. How do they interact? Okay, there is a force of attraction between the positive and negative charge. Similarly, if I can have two positive charges interacting, then it is like charges interacting, in which case it is a force of repulsion. Similarly, I can have two negative charges, which is again like, and force of repulsion. So what is the magnitude of this force and what is the direction? As you know, force is a vector quantity, which means it has both magnitude and direction. So this force between two charges is actually given by Coulomb, and it states that the magnitude of this force is directly proportional to the product of the two charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. This you have been studying from high school, and the direction of the force is along the line joining the two forces. Now you can ask which whether charge 1 is exerting a force on charge 2 or charge 2 exerting a force on charge 1. Both are true. Okay, if I say Q1 and Q2, Q1 experiences a force due to Q2, Q2 experiences a force due to Q1. Okay, and they experience this force through what is known as the electrostatic field. We'll come to that in the next class. Okay, now the proportionality constant is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught in SI unit, where epsilon naught is the permittivity of free space or vacuum, and which is in air. Epsilon naught is 8.85 into 10 power minus 12. The more commonly used unit is farad per meter. The other unit you can derive it from this formula itself. It will be Coulomb square per Newton meter square. So that is the another unit in SI, Standard International. Now to picturize this force of interaction, let us say I have the reference point as origin. I place a charge Q1 at a distance R1 from origin, and similarly I have a test charge which is Q2. So I call Q1 as source charge to begin with, okay, and Q2 as test charge. When I place the Q2 at a distance of R2 and the position vector is R2, okay, so there are direction associated with this location of the charges. So we have to bring in the vectorial concept. So you can see here small r1 plus capital R12. What is capital R12? Capital R12 represents the vector, okay, with a magnitude of the distance between the two charges and the direction along the line joining the two charges. If, because both are positive charges, the direction will be in a repulsive interaction, so it will be pointing away from Q1. Okay, so that is for R12. So if I put similarly R21, it will be pointing away from Q2, it will be going along this direction. So you can clearly see that in this case I am talking about the force experienced by Q2 due to Q1. So the distance is R12. How R12 is related to R1 and R2, small R1 and R2, it is related with the triangle law of addition of vectors. So if I say R1 plus capital R12, then you got small r2. So which means R1 to capital R12 will be equivalent to R2 minus R1. So I can substitute for this unit vector, and the unit vector can be replaced because a vector is nothing but the modulus of the vector multiplied by the unit vector. Okay, so with that concept you can actually see this formula at play. So this kind of formula is very useful when you deal with physical quantities, especially for this case the electrostatic force, where you talk about position vectors with respect to your reference point. Now this is well known. Now as far as the principle of superposition is concerned, what it means is, let us say I have several test source charges. There is one test charge I am bringing in space. So I have a region of several source charge. Each of the source charge will be exerting a force on test charge. So each of them will be exerting along the line joining those charges. Now the net force experienced by this test charge due to this collection of source charges is the sum of the individual forces. So this is the substance of the principle of superposition. Okay, so this again you have learned in high school. So to reiterate, what we have done is, if let us say I have collection of charges, source charges as Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5 like that, and there is a test charge which I call it as Q. Okay, now this Q will be experiencing due to Q1. That will be the force one. Q test charge will be experiencing a force due to small Q2. The test charge Q, capital Q, will be experiencing due to Q2. Similarly, test charge will be experiencing due to Q3 for F3. So F will be equivalent to the total net force experienced by this test charge will be equivalent to sum of all these charges. So which can be simply replaced by because we are talking about discrete charges, we can simply replace by a summation notation, which is the sigma here, where k runs from 1 to n. I am sure this is also clear to you. Now, how strong is the electrostatic force of interaction? This is more interesting between two charged bodies. And how does this force actually compare to gravity? Okay, so then why is it that we do not see electrostatic force in our daily life as much as we see gravitational force? Okay, in fact, if you look at the forces, the four forces which can be strong, classified as strong, weak, electromagnetic, and gravitational. The weakest force among these four forces is going to be gravitational, but still we see only gravitational force. Why? So these are the questions that we will try to answer. For this answering these questions, I am going to draw some inspiration from Richard Feynman lectures, volume 2 on electricity and magnetism. And let us say I have a human being, okay, and normally we human beings, we are neutral, okay, but sometimes sometimes during winter, okay, we used to build some statics charges. Okay, suppose we have experienced this static force due to the building of some charges on the surface of our body, and whenever we go near another object and touch it, we feel a very short, intense shock, but very short period. We feel tuck just like that. Okay, so that is a static electricity that we have seen in our life, but it is not as commonly as seen with gravity, because we know moment I leave this pen, the pen drops. You leave anything, gravity attracts it. Okay. So gravitational force is seen, but electrostatic force, okay, is not as easily seen as a gravitational force. But interestingly, you look at electrostatic force of magnitude, it is very strong force. Okay, we'll try to answer that. So let us assume that there is a human being, and this human being carries excess electrons equivalent to that of 1% weight of this human being. Okay, so that many excess electrons he carries. Now let us say another human being comes, okay, and he comes, say stays away from this fellow 1 meter. Today in COVID time, we are being asked to stand at least 6 meters away, but even after wearing mask. Now let us assume that these two human beings are coming, but each of them, for simplicity, let us assume that they weigh 100 kilogram. Okay, they weigh 100 kilogram. The 1% weight of, because our body is mainly constituted by the fundamental unit proton, and proton being the heavier mass than electron by how much time? Almost close to 2000 times. Okay, 10 power 3 times order. Proton heavier than that of electron. Okay, now the human being, he also carries 1% weight of electrons, equivalent charge. Okay, excess electrons. Now both of them are negatively charged. Let us say both of them come closer by 1 meter. How are they going to interact? Okay, first of all, can they come closer to that? That is something to be answered. Okay, so assume each human being weighs 100 kilogram, and the density, because our body constitutes mostly water, we can assume that the density to be 1 gram per cc approximately, and each of these fellows carry 1 kilogram worth of protons. 1 kilogram worth of protons, equivalent charge electrons in electrons is excess. So how much excess? 1 kg worth of protons, equivalent charge in electrons, which means he weighs 100 kilogram. Now 1% corresponds to 1 kilogram, okay, which is 1000 gram. We know the density is 1 gram per cc, which means every centimeter cube, its weight is 1 gram. Okay, now 1 kilogram is 1000 grams, which means it will be 1000 cc. But we know every 1 cc is equivalent to 10 power 23 electrons by Avogadro number. So which means for 1000 cc, each human being carries enormous amount of electrons. How much? 10 power 26. Now with that, with so many electrons, each of them carrying negatively charged, think about it. How are they going to interact? Can they come closer at a distance of 1 meter? Let us assume for a theoretical purpose, they are coming closer to 1 meter. Okay, then what is going to happen? What kind of force they will be experiencing? So we can simply work out with Coulomb's force. So where does this all lead to? Okay, when I estimate with this, we substitute for r equal to 1 meter, q1, q2, he carries, one person carries 10 power 26, the other carries 10 power 26e. So it is going to be 10 power 26e multiplied by 10 power 26e divided by 4 pi epsilon naught into 1 meter square. How much it is going to give? It is going to give you roughly about, this is the mathematics you see here, and is going to give you 10 power 24 Newton. Wow, amazing. Extraordinarily unimaginable force. How unimaginable? Think about the mass of the earth. The mass of the earth is 10 power 23 kilogram. Now 1 kilogram due to gravity experiences a force of 10 Newton. Now we have 10 power 24 newtons. So think about this, approximately 10 power 24. You think about this force, it's going to be tremendous. So can they come? Obviously the answer is no. But for mathematics sake and for analogy sake, we are trying to, they will be flying all around. If only electrostatic forces were existing in nature, and if we are carrying some additional charges, we will be only experiencing this electrostatic force. Fortunately, we are neutral. Okay, therefore we can interact with fellow human being. Okay, so that is one thing. Now, where is all this force? If I say 10 power 24 Newton for 1% extra, now what if he carries say 0.001%? It is going to fall, go by that factor only. Still the force is enormous. So we should be experiencing this force. Where has this force gone? Okay, so let us try to understand that. And how does this force compare to gravitational force of the same particles? So for this, I am going to take the example of two electrons interacting with each other, and when they interact, two electrons like this at a distance of d. Okay, and each of these electron is going to experience the force of repulsion due to the other electron. Therefore, this force will be due to this electron will be experiencing force due to this repelling, and the force will be along this direction. This electron due to this electron will be experiencing a force away from that, so it is going to be in this direction. That is why it is shown with these arrows. Okay, now how much is, and how does that compare to gravitational force? And what is the expression for gravitational force? The gravitational force is given by gm e square by, because here we are talking about two electrons, it is mass 1, mass 2. If it is two objects, now two of them are the identical particles which are electrons, so it is me, so it becomes gm e square. And again they are due to, we are assuming that they are interacting at the same distance, then only we can compare. So when we are comparing, we get even worse number. How much? 10 power 43. So where has this electrostatic force gone? Where has it gone? Why don't we see this force? Okay, so that is a perplexing question that we will try to answer. Now, try to understand this. Coulomb force is all about the force of interaction between two charges. Gravitational force is all about the force of interaction between two masses. Okay, and electron being lighter. Okay, so if I take a heavier mass, then probably I can get this factor lowered. How much lowered? How better can we get this? Now, as I told you, the fundamental unit that makes up our body is a proton, and proton is heavier. How much heavier? Almost 1000 times, 10 power 3 times. So the denominator, the gravitational force being in the denominator, this can go down. How much it can go down? It can go down to 10 power 37. No better than that. So the answer lies somewhere else. Okay, so possible explanation for the non-observation of electrostatic force in our daily life. Number one, we can say that, okay, we are constituted by neutral atoms and it has equivalent number of protons and electrons. Therefore, at a distance when you see, you can try to, and these are separated by, the proton and electron are separated by typically of the order of 10 power minus 10 meters. Okay, so approximately the force again can, if I can do a simple calculation based on the principle of that we learned. So I have an electron, I have a proton here, and there is a test charge here. Due to this electron, this test charge which is positive is going to experience a attractive force. Due to this proton, it will be repelling. So there is a force of attraction and repulsion, due to which there could be cancellation, and therefore that cancellation, it can decrease to some extent. But how much it can decrease? Probably you can show that it is going to decrease by a factor of 2d sin theta by r, where r is the r1, where r1 is the distance between the electron and the test charge, and d is the distance of separation between the proton and electron. How much it is? 10 power minus 10. So 10 power 37 multiplied by 10 power minus 10 will still give you only 10 power 27. So the ratio of electrostatic force to gravitational force is still enormous, unimaginably strong electrostatic forces. Okay, so that is not taking us farther than that, 10 power 27. But again, we can say that our body is actually having large number of, enormous number of protons, enormous number of electrons. Therefore, there is a net cancellation of this attractive force and repulsive force. Okay, so that is the thing. And this kind of stuff we can actually see in a conductor. In conductor, if you look at it, all the charges, okay, are the field inside a conductor is 0, and all free electrons go and reside on the surface of the conductor. I try to put some charges inside the conductor. I am going to not succeed, because I will be increasing the energy of the system, and by free energy concept, the system, such a system is not possible to exist. It will be an unstable system. Therefore, no matter how I try, I cannot put free charges inside the bulk of the conductor. All the charges are going to reside only on the surface of the conductor. So, what we are going to have, the net field inside the conductor is 0. Very similar in our body. There is a perfect cancellation of attractive and repulsive interactions, such as seen in astronomical nebulae or charged gas. Okay, the rattling is only due to the thermal energy, not due to these electrostatic forces. They are perfectly cancelling. Okay, so there is another explanation which is very interesting. That is, each of these forces, whether you take gravitational force or the electromagnetic force, they are all acting at different length scales. Okay, so if I describe the different types of force of nature, you can classify into 4 types. One is the strong, very strong force, such as the nuclear force, and the nuclear forces are inside the nucleus, and it is only happening at the size of the nucleus, typically of the order of 10 power minus 15 meters. Now I move away from this 10 power minus 15, say I go down to 10 power minus 10, I am not going to see these nuclear forces, I am going to see the electrostatic forces. So nuclear forces responsible for formation of elements. Okay, now the electromagnetic forces, that is all can explain, in fact, everything. The normal force when we walk, we experience the frictional force, the collision force between the billiard balls. All these things can be subset of this electromagnetic force. Okay, now they are all at a different length scale as compared to the nuclear forces. Now, if I talk about electrostatic force, then it is of the order of something like 10 power minus 10 meters, 10 power. But if I talk about magnetic forces, it can extend to galactic length scales, such as the solar magnetic field. That is at a much larger scale. So again, electromagnetic forces, you can have both attractive and repulsive. Okay, now there is also weak forces, which are certain kinds of radioactive decay. That again is short range interaction, that is at 10 power minus 15 meters. Okay, now gravitation force is the weakest force, which is always long range force, and also gravity is seen when the objects are heavier. The whole universe we are seeing, the solar system. Okay, so because of these different length scales of interaction, while string theory is able to reasonably able to connect these forces, still people are trying to get even better than the theory that is propounded based on string theories. Okay, propounded based on that string theory. Okay, the principles. So they still work on this. It's a work in progress about unification of forces. Okay, so that is about. But what is the take-home message? Take-home message is the electromagnetic forces are pretty strong, and it extends at different length scales. You talk about electrostatics, typically responsible for molecules, chemistry, all these things. And you talk about magnetic forces, which are for the where we seen it with solar magnetic field. Okay, galactic length scales, galaxy. Okay, so it is a very wide range of interaction. But gravitational is only attractive. Electromagnetic is both attractive and repulsive. This is another point to be kept in mind. Okay, now let us get back to the Coulomb's force and get back to our electromagnetic course. So let us try to understand this through this conceptual problem on Coulomb's force. Okay, very interesting question. 12 equal charges Q are situated at the corners of a regular 12-sided polygon. What is the net force on a test charge Q at the center? Okay, this is a typical electrostatic problem. Think like this, you have a polygon with 12 sides. I am able to put a charge at the center. The fact that I am able to put the charge at the center, which means the net force experienced by this test charge has to be 0. And now you can imagine that these 12 forces will be are positive charges. There is also a test charge positive, and because they are at diametrical, so we are going to get cancellation. Therefore, I am able to put it perfect. You can think like that. There is no harm in thinking of that sort. Now come to the next question. Assume that one of the 12 Qs is removed. Say, let us assume that we have a round clock 12 to 12, and at the 6th clock, say one charge I am removing. Now there is a charge at the net force experienced by Q. Explain your answer reasoning carefully. Now you can tell you that I can tell that the charge which is at the 12 is there, but whereas the charge at the 6 is not there. Charge at the 12 is there. So this is my test charge. Look at my right hand. This is my test charge. I am bringing a 12 o'clock is here, 6 o'clock is here. I have removed the 6 o'clock charges from here. Now 12 o'clock is going to experience a force. This test charge is going to experience a force due to this 12 o'clock charge. And it will be repulsive. Therefore, it will be towards the charge which has been removed. Okay, so that is the answer that you would like to give. Okay, this is one reasoning, but this reasoning will not be able to explain everything. Let us take an interesting problem. Now 13 equal charges are placed at the corners of a regular 13-sided polygon. What is the net force on a test charge Q at the center? In this case, we have 13 charges. Now again, think like this. You might think that there are 13, which is an odd number. Therefore, this test charge will be experiencing a force. The answer to that question is no. Now, what is going to, by principle of superposition, the forces experienced by this test charge due to these 13 charges will reconfigure in a manner that there will be net cancellation and you will be having no force acting experienced by the test charge. Okay, so that is the better explanation for this. So it will be the by principle of superposition, it is going to experience no force at all. Now, more interesting thing, if I remove one charge out of these 13 charges, what is the force on Q? So here, again you might tell that, sir, I have removed one charge out from here. So there are 12 charges. They will adjust in such a manner that again this test charge will be not experiencing a force. Now, the point you must remember again, the removal is akin to these charges which are located on the 13-sided at the edges of the corners of the 13-sided polygon. One of them is removed. It's a 13-sided polygon, and so it is empty now. So there was a positive charge. Now it is empty. So when it is empty, which means it has become neutral. Now this neutral state can be thought like this. Instead of removing that charge, I can bring a negative charge and neutralize that charge at that place such that that space becomes neutral. It is equivalent to removing that positive charge. So the extra charge that is placed now at that 13th location will be the negative q, equal amount of magnitude, but it is in different sign, negative sign, and the force experienced by this charge will be due to that negative charge towards, so the force will be pointing towards the missing q. Okay, so this is the idea. So you have to apply the principle of superposition, but this is a conceptual problem. So it is like when you remove it, you are actually neutralizing that point. You remove that charge. Instead of removing it, I could as well place a negative charge and kill that positive charge, neutralize that place. So now the force is due to that the extra charge that I brought over there, that is a negative q. So that is the answer. Okay, so that is very interesting problem. Now this one is pretty straightforward. Find the force exerted by q1 on q2. Two different locations are given. So you have to employ that position vector concept. So you apply the formula which is written on one of the slides. You will get this answer. Direct answer 86.4 AX plus 64.8 AY nanonewton, because we are talking about nanocoulombs and the distances. So you will see that it will be along that. Okay, so that's about the concept over here. Okay, so it's a nanonewton because there is a additional nano over here. So we will come across that. Okay, so that's it. So you'll get this answer. So what does this tell you? Force of interaction is a vector which has a magnitude along AX direction and the magnitude along AY direction. And the unit of force is Newton, because we are dealing with the nano charges, nanocoulomb. So the force effectively you substitute over here, and there is here to the power 3 in the upstairs you have only one power which is there. So you can see that it's a vectorial concept that is going to come. So here it is modulus. So the distance you can see. Thank you so much.